Yeah, we've got about a half hour left, so we're going to make that happen. Next up, everyone, we've talked a lot over the sessions about what comes up for us inside of interviews or before interviews from a mindset perspective. And I don't know many better people that know the human mind and the ins and outs of it and how to think about it, how it impacts us, and how can we shift it than who's going to join us next, which is Victoria, someone who has spent her career and life really dedicated to uncovering what is it that's going on up here and how does that impact who and how we show up as in the world. So Victoria, I'm very excited to bring you to the stage. And then speaking modestly, Victoria is my significant other, so not to throw that in there, but I think very highly of you, and I'm looking forward to what you're going to share with all of us.
Aw, that's so sweet. Thank you. I am just so excited to be here. I want to preempt this with we have a little dog that's with me that just woke up. So good timing, right? So if you hear a little bit of barking, I'm going to try to just go right through that. I am excited to be here and just share a little bit of, my world with you. I want to share that in my profession, I'm a therapist and I work for myself. And I'm doing a lot of different things. I teach for Columbia University. I'm a doctoral candidate, traveling all over the country and really the world before COVID, talking about trauma, approaches on helping people. None of that could have been possible if I would have stayed in what Patricia said was we don't have a box, if I would have stayed in that box. I have gotten to where I am and have been able to do the things I've been able to do because I've trusted my journey. And I think that, in the past sessions, Peter was talking about trusting the process, and we all have to trust our journey. Now, one of the things I'll share with you today is about the brain, not to get too technical or neurological, but I am a person who has my grandmother and my mom were neurologists. So I grew up talking about the brain a lot, but I'm just going to go high level with you today. Okay. So the reason the brain is so important to understand about, and I know that a lot of you have heard about neuroplasticity and mindset. The reason it's so important is because when we are hijacked by our anxiety about ourselves, how we look, how we sound, what they're going to think about us, it actually hijacks your brain and then it becomes all about you. And when it's all about you, you completely lose sight of why you're there in the first place. And today we realize, right, it's about contribution. It's about how can I be the solution finder? How can I be someone that can be useful? And what is it that these people are trying to create? And I can be part of that. So, understanding about how to master yourself is one of the most important parts about all of this. So, I just want to share a little bit about what a lot of us may not know about the brain, which is that it is plastic. That's what we call neuroplasticity. We've heard about it, but what does that actually mean? I don't say it, science says it. I say that to the kids that I work with, that science says it, not me, that the brain is plastic. And what that is we have neurons in our brain that make connections. So when you have an interview, for example, that you've gone to, and it's gone awfully bad, which all of us have been on those interviews, and you have a feeling about that interview. Let's say you don't have a growth mindset, which we're going to talk about in a moment. All of a sudden, every interview you walk into, every building that smells the same, every person that's interviewing you that looks the same, all of a sudden is going to incite in you a feeling and a thought that is very similar. It could be, I can't do this. This is going to go bad, whatever it is. And the more you allow those kinds of thoughts to be present in your mind, those neural connections get formed, and then they have little neuron babies. And then you have your entire mindset around, I'm never going to do this. I'm never going to get this. And your whole mindset is around, it's a limiting belief. And our brains are, I like to say, a little stupid. The more we feed it, that's what it takes on. And if we want it to take on something else, all we have to do is switch it up. Now, how do we do that? That's the neuro end is done. And I'm just going to move into the mindset part. The mindset part is you either have a growth mindset that allows you to really focus on the process, or you have a mindset that is limiting and it has you focused on the very moment and what flaws you have or what's going to go wrong. So, in order to have a growth mindset, we have to focus on different things. So, what I'm actually going to do, David, you said it was okay. I'm going to have everybody put in the chat, and I'm just going to read as I go along. What is a limiting belief that you have? Okay. And as everyone's putting it in the chat, I'm going to go through with you. And I wrote out some of the different ways that these limiting beliefs come up for us. And I want you to think about yourself through this process. Okay. Do you stew on things? Are you a stewer? Are you a dweller? What does that mean? That means, oh my God, this is going to go wrong. I can't do this. This is going to go awful, right? Are you focused on that? If that's one of your limiting beliefs, imposter syndrome, procrastination, math is too hard to learn, overthinker, that people don't respect me, I'm out of my depth. Okay. If stewing on something negative is something that you do, a tip that I have for you is to, and this is something I do, focus on the opposite that is positive and have a gratitude mindset. So, something that I know and David does as well is we often talk about our gratitudes and our appreciations. So, if you are a stewer and a dweller, what you want to do is start writing out in a journal or a list all the various things that you are legitimately appreciative of and grateful for, and start saying them to yourself. It is not a joke when we say practice, because the brain doesn't know if you don't practice. I actually have many, many post-its. David will open a closet and there'll be post-its on the closet door, my underwear closet drawer, because anywhere you can post it, you just post it right there. Whatever it is you want to think and be, you post it. Okay. If you are a magnifier, what does that mean? If you have thoughts like you overreact, oh my God, I can't believe I didn't answer that question correctly. Now this is going to be over. What you want to do is focus on the bigger picture. Okay. You want to stop yourself. You want to go back and just zoom out. So if you have a camera and you're a photographer like me, just picture yourself zooming out and looking at the bigger picture of what you're actually committed to. I'm here for this interview, not because this interview is the end all be all of me. I'm here for this interview to learn. So if I didn't answer that question the way I wanted to answer it, that's okay. I'm here to grow. So really zoom out and don't magnify and make it the worst thing in the whole world. Okay. If you are an all or nothing person, you don't see any gray in anything. Okay. It's either this or it's that. What you want to do is cut yourself some slack. Nobody's perfect. You're perfectly imperfect, as we like to say, right? And you want to get really present to some of the critical language that you use about yourself or the situation that you're in. And just be really compassionate with yourself. And here, I don't have time to get into it, but compassion-based practices. What is it about yourself that you can acknowledge? What is it about the situation that you can appreciate, right? What are the gray areas in between? If you are someone who is a fortune teller like me, who thinks that they can tell the future, that you are or are not going to get this job, right? The problem with fortune telling, if I was a fortune teller, I'd be a bazillionaire and everybody would have a seat at the table and world peace would be present, right? It's usually wrong. Our assumptions are incorrect. So as I like to say, my mom used to say to me, if our assumptions are usually incorrect, what you want to do is switch your negative assumption for a positive one and see if you can dwell on that. So assume the most positive outcome is going to come out of this situation and go forth with that. And ask yourself, if I was going to assume that, what would that look like? How would I be speaking? How would I, pick myself back up after a fumble, after a question, something like that. And finally, if you're someone that perseverates, like really perseverates on something someone has said, or personalizes everything, right? That's like the marker of anxiety when everything is about you. I used to be like that. I thought that all eyes were on me. Everyone was looking at what I was wearing, how I was saying it, what I was doing. If I did something wrong, the world would be over. My message to you, and I say this very humbly with love, is that it's not about you. Most people are not looking at you and they don't care. And it's really not personal to you. That if you weren't there, somebody else maybe would be. I mean, that's the harsh, just truth, that it's not about you. So if something happens and the first thought that you have is, oh, this is about me. What about me? Look at me. They're going to think something about me. Stop personalizing it. It's not about you. And a mentor I had once said something that felt really, really harsh, but she said, Victoria, you're not that important. And what that means is, like, the world will go on without you. The world hasn't stopped. And at first, my young, anxious brain was like, what do you mean? But the truth is that it's not. It's not. And when you're able to humble yourself to that and be present to that, that's when you become more of a contribution, more of a, being part of a team. Now, I wanted to share a couple of things with everyone that I know David and I do, and these are just hands-on tips. David, do we have time to do that?
Yeah, absolutely. There's a couple of questions in the chat we can get to too, but go for it.
Perfect. So the first thing is, it sounds really simple, but I want everybody to do this. If you want to do it for homework, or you could do it in the chat now. Choose one limiting thought, and it could be the one that you put in the chat box. And choose a reframed thought and put that in the chat box. So for example, my limiting belief was always, I cannot trust myself and I doubt myself. I can't do anything right. That used to be my limiting belief. And my reframed thought that I meditate on is, I trust myself and I know what's best for me. And as I've grown up and have had many things happen in my life, both professionally and personally, the most important thing you learn is that you know you best. Nobody can give you the best, better advice than you can give yourself. So put in the chat box what it is. I see a limiting belief, I'm not good enough. What would be the opposite of that? And I'd like everyone to participate.
Maybe it would be useful, because that's actually one of mine, and I'll share that authentically with everyone. A lot of times I feel like I'm not good enough. I don't belong here. Like, this is not for me. I'm not going to actually achieve what it is I think I'm going to achieve. So Victoria, maybe we just, with that one, how would you either coach me or just reframe it? Is it simply, I am enough? And what else might people do to push that forward?
Really great example, David. So let's work with you, right? So I am enough. And this actually bleeds into the next thing that I'd like everyone to try at home, which is, if you were to wake up in the morning, and what we usually do, and we've learned this from our own personal development, is to create ourselves the way that we want to feel, the way that we want to be, right? We may not feel like we're enough, but if the reframe thought is, I am enough, and you were to create yourself today, David, as the possibility of being enough, what would that look like? How would you speak? How would you stand? What would your facial mannerisms be? You want to share?
Yeah, I actually created something a while back, which is present to me right now, which I can share with everybody, but my posture would be different. I would be talking with confidence, courage, charisma. Like, that's how I would show up, with this authority, knowing that I do have the power, I am capable, I am enough. And that shows up a lot of times how I speak. But even as I asked that question, you could tell I was a little bit withdrawn. I was in that I'm not enough mentality. And as you said that, I stepped in and stepped up. And that's what I think is really there inside this exercise for everybody. Somebody coached me through this a long time ago, everybody, and I think you can create your own superpower, your super identity, your Superman. And I created this saying: I am a confident, courageous king. with savoir-faire and sexiness, a tough, resilient, badass gladiator. And I would say that to myself, and I would reframe it to myself. And all of a sudden, as you start programming yourself with that kind of mentality, it sounds weird at first, it feels weird at first, it starts showing up. And this isn't like woo-woo. So I'll stop there, Victoria, but you can elaborate on
Yeah,
that.
I
Or
love
Dawood
that.
wants to come in, I think. Dawood, how did that sound?
I'm blown away, guys. I'm just totally loving it. And it's so true because, you know, I'm thinking back maybe 20 years ago. I remember I had to give a speech and I was sick with fear. I was like, totally to Victoria's point, I was like, I'm going to stand up. My voice is not, I'm going to be so nervous. I'm going to choke. They're all going to laugh at me. No one's ever going to, you know, they're going to look at me like, you know, and just be that guy, you know, how could he even stand up? And it was about me. And it was coming up to my turn to speak. And I was like the guy after the next one. I was like, I can't do this. I'm just like, this is a disaster. I was just shaking with nerves. And I had a thing where I would like try and hold my breath to slow my pulse down. It wasn't working. All the only thing that was happening was I couldn't breathe. And then the guy before me got up and he just bounced on the platform and he was like, okay, everyone, let's get into this. I want to talk to you about this, that, and the other. And he was animated and energized. And I was like, and I knew that guy wasn't that energized normally. So I was like, he has bounced on stage in a different persona to how he normally is. And then they called my name and I'm like, some voice said, why don't you try that? And I did. I just bounced on the stage and I was like, okay, everyone. So this is what I'm going to talk about. And I just talked myself into, I am Barack Obama. I mean, it was before Barack's time, but I was like, effectively, I was this person. And before I knew it, I was in it. And I was like, and then they laughed. And then I realized you can do this. And it's a bit like being up on the surfboard and then you're up and then you wobble, but you keep your balance. And totally, Victor, what you said is absolutely right. You talk yourself into that space. And then I did it the next time, and I did it the next time. And eventually, guess what? Eventually it becomes you. You become that person, right? You can stand up and you can talk and people listen to you and you're like, okay. And it didn't start that way. And by the way, I found out that Barack Obama didn't start that way. There was a time when he was nervous, when he couldn't talk like he talks now, right? But he, you know, he obviously listened to you, Victoria, and he figured it out. So,
well, I love those examples, Dawood and David. And, you know, a lot of us think, you know, has anyone ever, and you can, you know, nod, whoever I'm seeing on the screen, has anyone ever said, I don't want to get up and go to the gym, or I don't want to get up and actually feed the dog this morning? Okay. But you do it anyway, right? And then you go to the gym and you feed the dog and the dog feels satiated and happy and you feel good, right? And then the next day you remember that good feeling. You say, no, I don't want to feel that good again. And then you do it again and you do it again. A lot of us have this myth that the brain works the opposite way, that we first have to feel good in order to actually step into something. But actually, if you practice, that's why I said the brain is a little stupid. It's just an electrochemical machine that just does stuff. It's the mind that makes meaning. So if you, it's like we say, train your dog, right? Train your brain. You can actually train your brain to be whoever the hell you want to be. And, you know, what you did, Dawood, is exactly that, is that you stepped into it and you trained yourself until you felt that, you know? And so I think that's really important. And to add to David, what I do, and I really like this as a practice, I wake up in the morning, and I may not do this writing it out, but I do this now in my head. I say to myself, what do I have to do today? So I'm still old school, so I write stuff down. I'm like, all right, so I'm doing this million black interns thing today, and I have like 3, you know, clients, and I have meetings. Who do I want to be? And so I say to myself, today I am the possibility of contribution, love, and a space for expression, right? And in that, I think to myself, as that possibility stepping into today, what does that look like? How do I have to speak? What kind of energy do I have to bring? What do I have to put away? Like, there are things I'm dealing with that you guys don't know about, but I have to put that away, right? In order to be the possibility of that. And so that has been a super, super powerful practice, especially when you're in interviews and you're stepping into something that is unknown.
Yeah, I wasn't planning clearly everyone to share what my thing was. Sometimes it's still a little uncomfortable to actually say it and own it. And so even someone like myself, not that I'm anyone special, as Victoria said, we're not necessarily all that special. The more you do this stuff, what Victoria's speaking to, you start to own it. You start to step into it, even though you don't see it as your reality right now. And the more you practice it, the more you reinforce it, the more it becomes you. And Victoria's helped me a lot with that.
David, we were bowling yesterday, and what did I tell you I did?
The first ball she threw, she said, I don't know what her limiting belief was, but she said it to herself. Went right in the gutter. What was the second outcome, Victoria?
So I'll actually tell you what it was. David and I started bowling together. This was the second time, and we went to a bowling alley. That, by the way, was awesome in Elmont, Queens. And you don't know this, David, but there was a couple next to us. And this girl had such swag, and like she would like come up. I don't know if you noticed her, David, but she would come up to the lane. I don't know if she was experienced, but it looked like she just like dropped the ball. She wouldn't even look to see if the ball hit the pin. She would just walk away and like sashay back to her seat. And I thought to myself, I want to do that. And she would like, hit all the pins. So David, what I did was I like would watch her, and then I would go up to the lane and I would throw my ball. And I realized that every time I would watch her, when it was her turn and then I would go, what I would say to myself is, I am a badass. And those were the strikes, David, that I made. And then I tried it the other way and I said, I can't do this. And that was the first ball that went in the gutter. And it was like such an interesting energy shift that I noticed, an experiment that I did with myself.
Wow.
That your energy is completely impacted by the thoughts and the stuff that you feed yourself.
Totally.
Inextricably tied, right? So that's my story about yesterday, David.
Amazing. Well, there you go, guys. You got firsthand knowledge into the intricacies of that. Darwin, I don't want to shortchange us, but I would love to get Guillaume in here just to say a few words as well.
Totally. Let's do that.
All right, Guillaume, I'm going to share with everybody, Guillaume and I have had a couple conversations. He joined a number of our sessions thus far, and I wanted him to just share a little bit of what showed up for him, because he implemented and integrated a lot of what we've been discussing over time. And Guillaume, I know we don't have a lot of time. I'd love for you to share a little bit about your story and some things that you would share with everyone that made a difference for you. And I also realize, Victoria, thank you so much. As this goes on, I don't want to shortchange the thank you and the acknowledgement of you inside of this. And Dawood, I'm sure you feel the same.
Absolutely off the charts, Victoria. It was phenomenal. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much for having me. This was really beautiful. I'm very emotional about this project, so I love it. Thank you so much for having me.